featured speaker, DarkSky's very own Amber Harrison. We're super excited and grateful to have her here today. Amber grew up in Wichita, Kansas, where she spent most of her time riding and caring for horses, which is so cool. She received her undergraduate and master's degrees in anthropology with a focus on bioarchaeology at Wichita State University. Amber worked in the field of cultural resource management for several years before becoming a park ranger and interpreter at Big Bend Ranch State Park, the largest, most remote, and darkest park in Texas. Being a ranger allowed Amber to share her knowledge and experience with the public through outreach and education programming focused on the natural and cultural resources of the park and greater Big Bend region. Her focus on dark sky conservation developed during her time as a ranger, where she incorporated dark sky education in her programming and community engagement to raise awareness about the importance of natural dark skies on the natural world and the human experience. Amber has completed successful applications to the Dark Sky Places program for public lands in the Big Bend of West Texas and is active in dark sky advocacy throughout the region. In her free time, Amber enjoys photography, hiking, mountain biking, and spending time with the friends and dogs, one and the same. So with that, Amber, I will go ahead and spotlight you and turn it over to you. If you are not Amber, please mute yourself so that we can focus on her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Betta Maya, and welcome everybody. Thank you guys for being here. That was a pretty comprehensive introduction there. Thanks. First, I just want to say the post for this with my staff picture with my dog Bebo was the best. So thanks to our interns for putting that together. I love seeing that. He's here, but he's sleeping, and I don't want to get him excited, but he's definitely with us. So in case anybody was wondering if he's going to be here, he's absolutely here. So yeah, I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everybody see this?
We sure can. It looks great.
It's fantastic. So as Betta Maya said, or maybe she didn't, I am the Dark Sky Places Program Associate. I've been with Dark Sky for a little over a year, so not that long. I'm still learning myself. So this is one of the first, I guess this is the first presentation like that that I have given to our advocates about the program. So it's kind of a work in progress. I have several ideas with how I want this to go in terms of having it be most useful for you. I understand that some of you have maybe never heard of this program. A lot of you have a lot of experience with this program. So I tried to tailor this to be a tool that you guys can take away with you. So Betta Maya should drop the presentation in the chat. It is an interactive presentation, so there are links to additional resources so that you guys can walk away with this with a full package and a full better understanding of what the program is. I can't possibly cover it all. So I am going to go a little bit quick on some of the points, but I just wanted to let you know that is how this presentation should work. So real quick, just a little overview of what we're going to go over is I am going to just give a basic overview of the Dark Sky Places program. What it is, I'm not going to get too into details about its history. I have links for all of that to our website and some amazing information that our other employees have put together. But I'm really going to get into the details about the certification categories, primarily looking at the goals and the differences between the categories of certification. And then we're going to look at the steps to apply. And hopefully, if I don't ramble on too long, we'll have a good amount of time for question and answers. I'm also sort of envisioning this as a stepping stone to other talks where we can dive deeper into some of these topics to really improve sort of our collective understanding of the program and how it should work and some of the nuances, because it actually is fairly nuanced. So I'm going to jump right in. And if somebody could help me keep an eye on the time too, that'd be great. So what is the International Dark Sky Places program? It is a program that was founded in 2001 by then International Dark Sky Association. It is a conservation program that recognizes and promotes the stewardship of our night sky resources in protected areas and communities throughout the world. really focus on 4 key actions. That's outdoor lighting, management, and policy, dark sky friendly lighting installations, outreach and education, and monitoring night sky quality, so documenting and monitoring that night sky quality. If you look at this program or this presentation, each of these underlined topics will take you to additional resources. I'm not going to click on them because they will take us down a rabbit hole. But just so you know, that's why they're underlined, and that's where you can learn more. There are currently over 200 certified international dark sky places worldwide. We got a couple more that are currently getting ready to be announced, and many of you are working on certification applications that are in the process. You can click on this link here to see where the sites are and learn more just about the basics of the program. Right now, I'm going to jump into sort of the benefits of the program. Hold on, let me go back real quick. Sorry, had a little glitch there. Okay, so the benefits of the certification, why are we doing this? It really have a number of different reasons why we're doing this. Preservation of the night sky in general. So places preserve natural beauty and ecosystems. So I think we all are really aware of the negative impacts that artificial light, certain types of lighting at certain exposures can have on both human health and the natural environment. So these places, these certifications through this program help to preserve the natural beauty of these places and ecosystems. It is a draw for tourism and economic development. So places, certified places, are a place where people will come and visit for their experience. They will spend money. They will encourage interactions with the environment. There are places that people can go to learn, but really it's a draw. People who are into astrophotography or just general stargazing in general or astronomy are drawn to these places. They are drawn to the places, but they also can help their presence in visiting these places helps draw attention to the communities also that surround them. Places raise awareness about light pollution, and they promote responsible lighting practices. It improves health and safety. Places promote safer and healthier environments for both people and wildlife. And there's a big focus on environmental conservation. Our methods, lighting policies, lighting practices, these sorts of things promote sustainable practices in terms of lighting and energy conservation. So we're going to jump right into the 5 different categories. We have international dark sky parks. Those are publicly or privately owned spaces that are protected for natural conservation, that implement good outdoor lighting and provide dark sky programs for visitors. International dark sky sanctuaries. These are the most remote, often the darkest places in the world, where the conservation state is the most fragile. International dark sky communities are legally organized, legally recognized cities and towns that adopt quality outdoor lighting ordinances and undertake efforts to educate residents about the importance of dark skies. International dark sky reserves consist of dark cores that are surrounded by a periphery of populated areas, essentially communities where policy controls are enacted to protect the darkness of that core. Urban night sky places is the newest of our certification categories, and this focuses on sites that are near or surrounded by large urban environments whose planning and design actively promote an authentic nighttime experience in the midst of significant artificial light. So one of the things that we're going to talk about is looking at how each of these certifications are different from one another. Really what we're looking at with these 5 are 2 that are really focused on conservation. So the parks and the sanctuaries are really focused on the conservation of the environment. The natural and cultural resources are being conserved through these practices, through this certification and through our efforts. Communities and urban night sky places are focused on the built environment. So with these, we're really looking at improving areas that already have some level of light pollution associated with them. So we're really looking at improvements there. And then international dark sky reserves are kind of a combination of conservation and that built environment where that dark core is often a highly sensitive sort of conservation area, like a national park, for example. And then the surrounding areas are more like our dark sky communities where they have some level of built environment. So like I said earlier, each of these categories are associated with key actions. So we have goals and characteristics that make up each site. And then we have key actions that each certification is kind of built around. And then we have eligibility requirements for each of those certifications. So we're going to look really close at the goals and site characteristics of a dark sky park. These are protected, typically protected areas for scientific, natural, educational, and or cultural heritage resource for conservation purposes, but also for public enjoyment. These are typically parks, refuges, forests, wilderness areas, monuments, protected rivers, those sorts of things, other protected lands. They have to have an exceptional quality of night sky and exceptional nocturnal environment. They are private, public. They can be private, public, or of mixed ownership, and we'll talk about what that means. And the emphasis is on visitor experience and outdoor recreation. They're there to promote astrotourism and ecotourism. They lead by example by providing experiences to the public through education, engagement, interpretation of the resources. And really for a park, the focus is going to be on capturing a larger audience. So if you think about a national park, a dark sky national park, that's a place where people are going to recreate. They may not go there just for the night sky. They go there to hike, to bike, to get on the river, to experience other outdoor recreation or cultural resources, but they are drawn there to also enjoy the night sky. So it's a large audience that really captures the park. Conservation of the night sky and other resources are a focus of the management and operations of dark sky parks. Key actions are around the lighting management plan. So each of these certifications have an action around either lighting management planning or policy, as in the case of communities and park reserves. So they're two different things, but they all guide the lighting management plan. The policy guides the use of outdoor lighting. In the case of a park, that lighting management plan is adopted by the management of the site. It follows the 5 principles for responsible outdoor lighting. We're not going to go into what those are right now. There's a link there, and we can have another talk about that later. But they recognize dark skies as an important natural, cultural, and scientific resource value in their management documents. So you think about the National Park Service. A big focus of their operations and their planning is all about conserving and protecting the night sky, but also recognizing it as a valued resource like other natural and cultural resources. As part of this, in the application, there must be lighting documentation. There's an inventory and a compliance plan associated with it. The compliance in a park applies only to public lighting. Private entities within parks and holdings are not do not apply. The leadership is through a restoration project and partnership with municipalities. There is a requirement for on-site programming. You have to have 4 minimum dedicated programs per year and have some regulation around visitor activity. You do also have to have a baseline night sky quality survey and continued monitoring. Let's see, signage and annual reporting. I'm not going to go too much into that. To be eligible to be in International Dark Sky Park, there are 3 main eligibility requirements, and that is that the site must be protected. It must be protected for its natural or cultural resources. Those can be protections at the federal, state, or at the federal or state level, for example, or through conservation easements if you're a private entity. It must have an exceptional night sky quality, which means that the Milky Way must be visible with the unaided eye. There is no artificial light yielding glare in proximity to the place, or there are no light domes, and if there are, they are restricted to the horizon. A visual band zenith luminance of 21.2 is the minimum requirement. It can definitely be higher. You can have a park that has a higher night sky quality value, more consistent with, say, a sanctuary, which we'll get into in a second. But that is the minimum value. And the third requirement is that there has to be nightly public access for all or a portion of the night, or, and this isn't included in here and I need to add it, or all or a portion of the site. So it doesn't have to be the entire site. Down here, we have the 2018 IDSP guidelines. Those are the full guidelines that outline all of these requirements. That is where you will get, if you're interested in pursuing a dark sky park certification, that's where you're going to go to figure out what exactly all of this means. We also have recently developed a applicant self-checklist to help with the application process. That's linked there as well. All right, so the goals and characteristics of a dark sky sanctuary is a little bit different. The focus is still on conservation, but it's really less about the visitorship and less about the experience and more about the resources and its location. So there must be an exceptional night sky quality and nocturnal environment with no threats or light domes in the vicinity. One of the characteristics that sets us apart from a park is that it really must have a wilderness setting with little to no development or infrastructure. Really, as one of our committee members put it, you really want to experience this place as our ancestors once did. Relatively untouched night sky, untouched natural environment that is very remote and a little bit difficult to get to. These sites are also protected for scientific, natural, educational, and or cultural heritage resources and public enjoyment. These can be public, private, or mixed ownership. The focus is, like I said, on highly sensitive natural or cultural resources. Cultural resources can be the draw as well. One of the big differences too is that between a park and a sanctuary is that sanctuaries, due to the remote location, are typically not very heavily staffed or funded. They tend to be harder to get to, so they don't really have that quality of that draw. They don't see the volume of people, so they don't really have to have, and we'll talk about that under the key actions, but they don't have that requirement to have the public outreach and education component to it because it's so hard to get to. So that's one of the key things that really sets that apart from a park. They promote also astrotourism and ecotourism, outdoor recreation, and lead by example through experience, engagement, education, and interpretation, like a park with much less of a physical emphasis on it. And again, conservation of the night sky is a major focus of management and operations in a dark sky sanctuary. The key actions are fairly similar to a park with some nuances. They do have the same lighting management plan that follows the 5 principles. There are a couple of minor differences between the requirements of the lighting management plan of a park and a sanctuary that you'd want to be aware of if you were to go down this road for application. They also recognize dark sky values in their management documents, lighting compliance and inventory. One of the differences here with this is that the lighting compliance applies to both public and private entities. So all entities within the sanctuary must comply. Let's see, what have I not said? Identification and mitigation of current and future threats. And you must show a plan on how you're going to mitigate potential threats to this highly sensitive area. That's a little bit different from a park where you don't, it's good. You do need to recognize the threats and acknowledge what the future might look like in terms of the potential for light pollution, but you don't have to have too much of an action associated with that, where with a sanctuary, we really do want to see broad plans and actions regarding the monitoring, the mitigation of any potential threats in the future. And of course, documentation of of the threats at the time of application. You have to have regulation of visitor activities and around the use of light. And then, of course, your letters of nomination and signage and annual reporting, that's going to be consistent with all of the certifications. To be eligible for the sanctuary certification, the site must be protected, the same as a park. Protections may come at the federal state level, national level, conservation easements if you're private property. We don't have, ultimately in the program, we don't have a whole lot of private property certified places, but it is something that's growing in interest. Exceptional night sky quality, all the same as a park, except that the brightness at the zenith needs to be routinely at least 21.5 magnitudes per square arc second or better. And nightly public access is required for all or a portion of the night and all or a portion of the site as well. So, and again, the resources to the guidelines and the self checklist are linked there in the table. Okay, dark sky community. This is totally different. Like I said earlier, this is really focused on the built environment. So we're talking about places that already have some level of light pollution associated with them. Really here, what we're talking about is improving and restoring the night through the efforts associated with a dark sky community. So these are town, city, municipality, or other similar political entity that is officially recognized by outside groups. Now, for all of these categories, when I talk about sort of how these things are defined, we do recognize that globally, towns and cities and parks and these things are all structured a little bit differently. That's one of the nuances between all of the different places that are certified. So I am presenting this a little bit generally and a little bit, focused on the US, but just throwing that out there. And if we have time, I can talk more about sort of some of those nuances. But it is legally recognized by outside groups. A governing jurisdiction has the authority to enact policy and may be unincorporated. So this certification category hinges around the development of a policy. The previous two, parks and sanctuaries, center around the development of a lighting management plan. So that's really more associated with the management of that site and of that area. A lighting policy is a little bit different in that it's actually developing and enacting a law that is associated with an entire community. So that's an important distinction. There are nuanced differences between the requirements of a lighting management plan and what we ask in the policy. So it's important to recognize those as you're moving forward, developing your application. Again, these are really, the goal is to really center these around the 5 principles for outdoor lighting. But the dark sky community really focuses on promoting going back to my first column, realize I skipped, promoting the ideals of dark sky to inspire policy development. So the inspiration with this certification category is a lot different than the other two, or the other ones other than a reserve, because you're really talking about development and planning and mitigating light pollution that is pretty much inevitable in a lot of developing areas. So we're really trying to inspire policy development and changing behaviors as a community moves forward past their certification. So they lead by example through quality outdoor lighting practices, restoration projects, engagement, and interpretation through the life of their certification. There is no geographical or population size limit to become a community. And the only other requirement is that the community must be accessible to the public. Key actions, like I said, development and passing of a lighting policy for that community. There is lighting documentation and an inventory of all the public lighting within the community. Private lighting is involved, but there is a much longer period for restoration of private lighting. I won't get into that today. Community commitment is demonstrated through city flyers, media, retrofit actions, like I said, lighting retrofit actions, funding, strategic planning, environmental planning. All of those things will or should incorporate a dark sky component. Dark sky education is encouraged in schools. In the guidelines, it says, we really want to see you engage with schools, but that's a difficult thing to do. So we do want to see at least some efforts of trying to engage with schools, if that's an option. Night sky quality documentation, you do have to have a baseline survey and monitoring. So unlike the parks and sanctuaries, a dark sky community is not centered around this idea of darkness. It's more really when you think about a community, I want you to think about efforts. A community is about the efforts and the actions of groups of people to improve the night sky conditions and to educate others about the importance of dark skies. So really, when you're thinking about the overall differences, that's really where communities shine in my mind. Is it's a collective effort. The sole requirement, eligibility requirement for a dark sky community is that the community must have legal organization that's officially recognized by an outside group. Unincorporated areas can participate in the program. They do have to enact a policy, and there are various ways that we can work with that as well. Like I said, there's no night sky quality requirement to qualify. A lot of people will ask, well, why do I have to look at the baseline study? Why do you have to have sky quality data? And that is so that we can track the progression and the impact of these efforts. So it's not really about how dark is it, it's about how are our actions changing the environment and working towards bettering the overall impact of light pollution. So a very different goal with the dark sky quality aspect of this application. I said International Dark Sky Reserve. This is our largest and more complex of these categories. I'm not going to go through all of this, but it's here for you as a reference. So really, what the reserve does is it consists of a core and a built periphery. So it's a combination of what I talked about for a park, where you have a dark core that does have a night sky quality requirement, same as the requirement is the same as a park. So you can sort of think about the core area having the characteristics of an international dark sky park, surrounded by communities that have characteristics similar to an international dark sky community. These entities then all work together through partnerships and collaboration to protect the night sky quality in the core. So this is a landscape level effort. It's the largest and most complex of the categories. It requires a great deal of collaboration and partnerships over what typically is a long period of time. There are some size requirements associated with this, where the core doesn't have a minimum size, but the periphery must encompass roughly 173,000 acres around the core. The core must be totally engulfed by periphery communities that have signed on to these efforts through their actions of developing policy and having a lighting management plan. So the core has a lighting management plan that is similar to that of an international dark sky park. And then the periphery communities will adopt the provisions of that lighting management plan and adjust that accordingly to the needs and characteristics of their communities. So it's really a combination of resource management and policy. So those things work together. Let's see, communities must have engagement programs to encourage all new outdoor lighting fixtures to conform to policy. So the lighting actions associated with this, again, are very similar to a core or similar to a park and a community, where the park has lighting documentation and inventory requirements that are identical to that of a park. And then the periphery has lighting requirements that are a little bit different than that of a community, but they have projects just that they must comply or complete very similar to that of International Dark Sky Community. A little bit of difference in terms of who the policy applies to and the level of detail in amount of your lighting retrofits in the periphery as compared to a community, but very, very similar with really the same goals and same intentions. And that is to work with an already existing built environment that has some level of light pollution that you are working to improve or, overall just to improve the conditions. So that's really the effort there. The eligibility requirements is that the core does have to be protected, just like an International Dark Sky Park. The periphery communities, of course, do not have to be protected because they are communities. Like I said, the periphery must completely engulf the core, surround the core, so it has to be completely around it. Let's see, I'm not going to get too into the details. There are some details around the requirements of the amount of land that needs to comply around the core. Like I said here, the periphery must encompass a minimum set of 1,000 acres around the core, or a land area sufficient to mitigate 80% of the current expected future threats of the core. That's kind of word salad, that there's a lot to unpack there, but there are some requirements that we have regarding that. Let's see, the boundaries must not be arbitrarily drawn to avoid big bright areas or urban other well-developed urban areas. So we need to remember when you're putting together your proposal for a reserve that you can't just avoid big areas because they're too overwhelming and difficult to address. We have to work together to come up with some way to address that big problem area, because that's the whole point, is really in the end, we want to work with improving these conditions. So the exceptional night sky quality in the core, like I said, is the same requirement as a park, 21.2 magnitudes per square second. And again, there's no night sky quality requirement for the periphery communities, just like an International Dark Sky Community. So, like I said, there's a lot to unpack here with the reserve. It is a big project in every single case. I am a big proponent of starting small with a reserve, or I'm sorry, with one of the other certifications and growing it into a reserve. That's really the idea behind the reserve. At least that's my understanding of how the reserve should work, where you can have an International Dark Sky Park certified, and then gaining that momentum, you start working with other protected areas in the region or around the site and other communities, and you can grow that effort over time. One of the most important things to remember about all of these certifications is they require a core network of really dedicated advocates and people who are invested in this cause. One person is not likely to really be able to maintain a certification into the future. So we want to, when we're thinking about a Dark Sky Park or a Dark Sky certification of any category, you want to think about not only just getting the certification, but the longevity of it. One more real quick, sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. Urban Night Sky Place. This is, like I said earlier, this is one of our newer certifications. I think we only have 6 or 7 right now. This is a really different kind of concept. It's a little bit of evolution from the International Dark Sky Community certification, where it's focused on the built environment, and it's focused on really education and experience around lighting. So having a private or a public park, an open space, an observing site, or a similar property that's located near or surrounding a large urban area or an urban area. It's not required to be protected. They are there to actively promote an authentic nighttime experience in the midst of significant artificial light. They provide night sky viewing opportunities and efforts to educate the public about the benefits of proper outdoor lighting. So that is their whole goal, is it's all about the experience. The focus is on experience, the impact of or the drawing attention to public safety and education around outdoor lighting. They are a leader in best practices for outdoor lighting and education, with the goal to inspire the others that are around them. So you have this place that's in the midst of a developed area. Really what we're trying to do is use this site to bring attention through experience to the problem of light pollution, show them best practices so that they can then go out into that surrounding environment and improve those conditions through education and outreach. The other thing that these sites do is they do provide a place for people to go and have a night sky experience in the midst of all of this, in the midst of development. So the idea too is that somebody can go to that site, learn about good lighting practices, learn about all of this, all of these efforts, but really also go and have a genuine experience with the night sky where they can observe it. So that is definitely one of the I think unique aspects of this particular certification. The key actions are around the lighting management plan. The lighting management plan is very similar to the other certification categories. It recognizes the place has to recognize dark sky. Dark skies is an important cultural, natural, and scientific resource value in management documents, just like the other ones. But one of the big differences is that for urban night sky place is that they have to be 100% compliant in all of their lighting at the time of application. So what I didn't mention with parks and sanctuaries and cores is that at the time of application, they're just required to be 67% in compliance with their lighting, with the lighting management plan. And then they have some benchmarks over time that they have to meet. With this one, we want to see 100% compliance at the time of application. So it's quite a bit different on that front. There is a night sky quality documentation, survey, and monitoring associated with this, just like the others. And collaboration with other places nearby is an important aspect. So one of the requirements is that if there is another already certified dark sky place proximate to your urban night sky place, we want to see a collaboration between the two entities. That's also unique to this one. The eligibility requirements is that it must be located near a developed area, near a populated area. There are some parameters around that. You can look at that on your own. The geography and the landscape must be significant or sufficient to mitigate the effects of any glare or light trespass from the adjacent properties. So that can be kind of a hard thing to achieve in an urban environment, but really what we want to see there is that you are making the effort to work with your neighbors to improve their lighting. So it's improving the overall condition of the general area, but it's also improving the experience of the visitor to that site. So there's kind of two functions with that. So we need you to show that as an eligibility requirement. Nightly public access for all or a portion of the night and all or a portion of the site. The site and or its partner organizations must engage visitors with direct interpretation of the value of natural nighttime darkness and the importance of quality outdoor lighting practices. So really what we want to see with an international dark or with an urban night sky place is that we want to be able to have people go to these sites to see what good, safe lighting looks like. So there needs to be some component of demonstration and interpretation at the site, because the idea is that we're encouraging people there to learn about this problem and then learn what solutions to this problem look like, and then go home and apply that in their neighborhood and in their communities. Again, the guidelines are linked here, and so is the checklist. That's a lot to uncover. I went through that really, really fast, so I apologize. I'm just realizing how much there is to unpack here. So getting started, how do you get your certification? What does one do? The first thing that you need to do is you need to identify what the appropriate category is for your area. So you might be on the board of a community organization, for example, or maybe you're on a conservation board or something like that. You need to work with your group work with your other advocates, other people who are interested in this with you, and review all of the materials on our website, review this presentation and all of the associated links, and learn as much as you can about the mission of our organization, learn about the impacts of this, the value of it, and really try to understand fundamentally, wholeheartedly, what this is going to accomplish. So really understanding why you want to do this and what your goals are. You can do that through, going to the How to Become an International Dark Sky Place page. That's a great place to get started. That will take you to all the links of Dark Sky and the world beyond. Establish a plan. Having a plan is really important before you really jump in. Like I was saying, having a good group of advocates, having a good partnerships, really kind of having a vision for who your partners are going to be, what your goals are, how you want to accomplish this, and what you want to do for the future. So not only getting the certification, but maintaining it into the future. Review all of the guidelines that are applicable, of course. The checklists, I would recommend going through all of that, just so that you have a really solid understanding of what is required for the certification that you want to apply to. Use our Dark Sky Advocate Network, find others to participate in this effort with you. Even if they're across the globe, our network advocates can help you through this process. I see a bunch of you on this meeting. You guys all collaborating, helping each other out is extremely beneficial to the mission and to the movement in general, but it also really helps us a lot because we have a small staff. So leaning in on each other to really help develop a solid plan before you jump in is really great for everyone. I think that really is one of the key to successes that I've experienced in this program. Initiating contact. So that's going to be the first thing that you do to let us know that you're interested in this. You've done all of your research. You have a good idea of what you want to do. You know who your players are. So then you will complete a pre-application inquiry form. In that form, you will provide me with as much information about your site as you can. Great maps or good maps. It will ask you, a range of questions depending upon what certification category it is. The more information you can provide in that step, the quicker and easier it's going to be for us to actually get you started. If you don't know, if you go through all of this and you still don't really know, that is 100% okay. You can still fill out that form. There's an option for you to indicate that you still have questions or you don't know. At that point, I will review it, and then we will work together to figure out what the right process is for you and what the right path is for you. So you will click on that link to initiate. That's how you get into what we refer to as our pipeline. That's the first step to the pipeline. Then I will review that. I will look at your eligibility. I will pair it with all of those eligibility requirements that we just went over. And once I determine that you're eligible, you will submit a one-time $250 application fee to get the process started. Then you will officially be in our pipeline and an active applicant. At that point, I will work with you. You will have access to all of our staff to help you develop all of the components of the application. There's a lot of this that's very technical. There's a lot of this that most people out of the gate just don't really know how to get started. We will provide you with all of those resources. You are not on your own, and we'll work together to develop all of that to make sure that you meet the requirements. The application process, got a little ahead of myself, is after you submit that fee, I will hold a kickoff meeting with you so that we will go through all of the guidelines. If you want, I will be there to address any of your questions and help you develop a solid plan moving forward so that we can have the best success and get the place certified.
We got 10 minutes left, Amber.
Okay, I'm almost done. So you'll work with us and DarkSky staff to complete all of those key actions. So as you go back through and you start thinking about your project, It might seem a little bit overwhelming. There's a lot that you're not going to maybe know, especially related to the lighting. We're all here to help you. So don't get intimidated by that. Let's see. So we do have this application process. What do you call this? Infographic on the website. It's a little outdated, but it is what we have out there right now. It hopefully will be a nice tool for you when you look back to refresh your memory about these steps. The initial inquiry phase really hasn't changed too much. Really, the big thing that's changed is that the review process is a little bit shorter. Average times to complete an application can take 1 to 3, if not more years. It just depends on your resources. It depends on your project scope. Many of you advocates don't do this for a full-time job, so oftentimes, especially with communities, you're working with groups of people who are doing this in their free time, and they don't have a lot of time to devote. So that can make it last longer, and that is okay. This isn't a race, so we want to make sure that this is an experience that lasts, that the certification is complete and it lasts in perpetuity. So don't get worried if it does take some time. Once the application is developed with us and we think that it's in a really great place, we will propose it to our nomination committee, the International Dark Sky Places Program Committee. They are a committee of experts from all over the globe who will review your application and will ultimately approve it for certification. Once it goes through that process and it is confirmed that it is approved, we will officially announce it and celebrate the certification. Then the hard work begins with your annual reporting and continuing your efforts into the future. So those are the steps. Those are kind of just the steps of the application process. I think hopefully we have some time to talk about some questions or answer some questions. Like I said, that was a lot. There's a lot about all of these certifications. There's a lot of nuanced differences between all of them. Not every site is the same. So we have areas where one site, may do something a little differently than another site. Anyways, I'll stop with that and try to answer your questions.
Thank you, Amber. Lovely presentation. We've had some great responses in the chat, people saying how helpful this is. So thank you so much for taking the time to come and speak with all of us today about kind of what really is DarkSky's flagship program. And just a huge shout out to you for handling this whole program kind of on your own at this point. Amber has been doing an incredible amount of work to really make this program the best that it can be. So just a thanks to you for the amazing job that you're doing running it. And thanks to all the advocates for coming to learn about it and expanding the program into more places. So as you can imagine, there are a lot of questions. I'm not sure we're going to get to all of them. So I'm going to try to ask the ones that I feel like will help the most amount of people. So I think this one from Paul is a pretty good question because I hear this a lot from advocates around the world, kind of the question of the nighttime access specifically. So how much of the night and how much of the site needs to be open at night? Like, I have seen this too. I've run across like Petrified Forest. You can't go into it at night all of the time. So, and he was specifically asking for the park certification, but maybe you can just go over like what that nighttime access requirement really means.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. That's one that we get often. So really the whole idea is that we want to have visitors come and experience the dark sky at these sites. So like that's one of the main goals of this. We also recognize that all of these sites have very different characteristics. Some of them have really sensitive cultural resources. Some of them have really sensitive natural resources. Some of them have safety issues where the management just doesn't want people walking around their very potentially dangerous park, in the middle of the night. So we understand all of that. Each site is different, and we will work with each site to figure out what portion of the site can be open. So in some cases, what I'll tell people is, even if it's just a parking area, if the parking area at your entrance gate, that's fine. If it's an area of the site that's maybe open until 10 p.m., a certain portion of the night is also fine. We want to be able to, if you wanted to do it that way, we just want to make sure that people can go there every night for at least a certain amount of time to observe the night sky. Of course, you also have the requirement to have your public outreach and education programs. So that is another opportunity to open up your site for programs. So you have to have that. That's separate from the DarkSky or from the access. So you have to have those. But if it's just a small portion, or if there's some way that we can work together to figure out how to meet that requirement, that's typically how we do it. So it is really case by case. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that does, because I was just in Argentina and one of the parks there wanted certification, but they're mostly closed at night because of the giant animals that will come out. And,
Exactly. And we even state that in the guidelines. It says, like if there's a legitimate reason lions come out at night, like we don't want to encourage that. So it might have to close. And so there can be exceptions. We just have to have good justification and good reasoning for that.
Okay, I totally agree with that. I also liked Michelle's question. She said, if your SQM measurements are averaging right at the threshold for the International Dark Sky Park requirements, and the light pollution at the site is not from the site itself, should you even bother submitting an application? Like if they're already pretty close and they don't really have control of the surrounding area,
right?
What would you say to that?
That's a really good question. That's a legitimate question. So I think with that, the answer in that one would be probably around your approach to it. So if you have this sort of threshold that you're just right at the baseline, really what maybe we would talk about then is, how are you going to work with your communities outside? How are you going to work with the communities that are impacting your site? So instead of really focusing on the night sky quality in and of itself, in that particular case, we would maybe want to say, well, let's focus our energy on your outreach and education. So maybe let's tweak things a little bit and do something at your site that is going to help mitigate this problem, so that we're not totally stringent on just like, you don't meet this and sorry, you can't do it. We want you to get into our program. So we want to find a way to, like, how can we work together to improve this problem? Because that's the ultimate goal of this certification. So we would just have to figure out a strategy, like, what are we going to do to mitigate this? And how are we going to track this moving forward? So your monitoring plan might be a little different than what somebody else does. And then I think that's a really good example of how, like, looking at how other sites have done things isn't a one size fits all strategy. So we would develop a strategy to help mitigate this problem. And then part of the beautiful thing about the annual reports is that's how we measure your progress. If we, in a couple of years, can look back at your annual report and say, this isn't working, then we'll figure out, what do we do? Do we change the certification to an urban night sky place? Do we do something different? And so it's really all about adapting to these settings and these different scenarios. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think having that certification, right, having a dark sky park that's this international place is leveraged to have that surrounding community do the work that they need to do to keep that certification.
Yeah. We want to see effort. It's really around the efforts.
Yeah. Well, it is the top of the hour, and I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. I apologize that we were not able to get to everyone's questions. There are a ton of questions about international dark sky places, which is really exciting. People are super interested. I know now that I'm in Tucson, I'm like, let's do a Southern Arizona dark sky reserve, right? It's a great way to put all of the ideas about dark sky conservation into action, to really meaningful action steps that we can all take wherever we are. It seems like there is some sort of certification that can fit most places, right? And I think Amber and the Dark Sky Places committee really work to help people find out how to fit into this program. So again, just a huge thank you, Amber, for everything that you're doing and for sharing this information. We will send out this recording as well as a link to the presentation, which has already been shared in the chat if you guys want to get a head start. So thank you for Amber for sending that so quickly. And if you want to come hear all this again, we will be back in about 6 hours. So it was a lot to digest. I know I'm looking to hearing it again. I always absorb a lot more when I hear it round 2. Or you can always review the recording as well. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Amber. Submit your awards nominations, vote for the Capture the Dark photography contest. And we will see you back here next month too.
Thank you, everybody. You know where to find me if you have any other questions.
Yes. Amber is on the Advocate Slack as well. And yeah, so are all of the IDA staff. So we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you all soon.